This presentation is a summary of research about the maltreatment and neglect of people with an intellectual disability by family. We want to share what we found and hear what you think about it. Remember that you can pause this presentation at any time if you would like to stop and think about the information. My name is Jess, and this research is from my PhD studies that I do at Curtin University. I'm helped by my 3 supervisors and 2 people with an intellectual disability. Involving people with an intellectual disability is important because people with an intellectual disability should get a say in the research that's about them. I'm going to talk about some bad things that might make you feel sad. Remember that you don't have to watch this presentation if you don't want to. And if it does make you feel sad and you want to talk to someone about it, please contact Lifeline. Here is some information about the different ways that you can contact Lifeline. I want to start by explaining some of the important words that I'm going to use in this presentation. The meanings of these words are based on or the same as the meanings written by the Royal Commission into the violence, abuse, neglect and exploitation of people with disability. Maltreatment means all the different types of violence, abuse and neglect. So physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse and neglect are all different types of maltreatment. Physical abuse is if someone is hurting you physically. Sexual abuse is if someone makes you do sexual things that you don't want to do. Mental abuse is when someone does things or says things that makes you feel sad or not good about yourself. And neglect is if someone is not helping you in the way that they're supposed to help you. So why do we need more information about the maltreatment of people with an intellectual disability by family? Well, research shows that people with an intellectual disability are maltreated more than people without an intellectual disability, and it can be hard for people with an intellectual disability to get help when they've been maltreated for reasons that are not their fault. And when maltreatment happens at home, it might be easier to hide, so it can go on for a long time. At the moment, we just don't have enough information about it. So what have we learned from our research? Well, the different types of maltreatment that I mentioned before are done to people with an intellectual disability in different amounts. Some research shows that money problems, drug and alcohol problems and stress can make people more likely to maltreat family with an intellectual disability. The studies had mixed results about family maltreating people with an intellectual disability more than other people. Some studies say that people with an intellectual disability are maltreated by family more than other people, for example, staff at a day centre or friends. And some studies said that people with an intellectual disability are maltreated by family more than people without an intellectual disability. But not all of the studies found the same result. This might be because there are different ways to think about maltreatment. We need more information about this so we can understand it better. The research showed that people thought differently about the maltreatment of people with an intellectual disability by family. Some people felt sorry for people with an intellectual disability who had been maltreated. Some people felt sorry for the families who maltreated the person with an intellectual disability. The research says that this is probably because people wrongly think that people with an intellectual disability are hard work for their families. Some people think that it's worse to maltreat someone without an intellectual disability. And the research says that sometimes people don't think that people with an intellectual disability are as good as people without an intellectual disability, which is wrong. The research about hiding maltreatment says that families might be able to hide maltreatment better when it happens than when it happens in other places. So maltreatment can go on for a long time. Sometimes maltreatment of people with an intellectual disability stays a secret because people don't think that families would hurt someone with an intellectual disability. Sometimes families want to deal with maltreatment themselves for lots of different reasons, like cultural reasons, because people think about it differently in different cultures, or maybe because they want to keep the person's disability pension, so they don't want the person to be taken away, and this was shown in one study. Sometimes what the family wants comes first instead of what people with an intellectual disability want, and that's wrong. The research says that sometimes when people with an intellectual disability tell someone about being maltreated by a family member, they are not listened to or believed, and that this is because sometimes people don't think that people with an intellectual disability can speak for themselves, which is wrong. For the rest of the research, the two people with an intellectual disability who helped me with my studies decided that we should look at neglect rather than all the types of maltreatment together. We spoke about this earlier, but neglect is when someone is not helped in the way that they should be helped. This might be done on purpose or not on purpose, and there's not a lot of research on neglect for all people, and even less about people with an intellectual disability. This might be because neglect means different things to different people. So what one person thinks of as neglect might not be what another person thinks of as neglect. Our research found that people think about the neglect of children with and without an intellectual disability in the same way. We were expecting a difference because other studies have found a difference between the way that people think about the maltreatment of people with and without an intellectual disability. It might mean that people think that child neglect is always bad, no matter who it is. We found that women usually thought that neglect was worse than men. We wanted to know how the news talk about people with an intellectual disability, because what the news says affects how people see people with an intellectual disability. Our research showed that neglected people with an intellectual disability isn't talked about much in the news. The news did talk about a 4-year-old girl with Down syndrome who died from being neglected by her parents. Sometimes the parents were blamed, and sometimes the government was blamed. This means that sometimes the parents were not held responsible. The research shows that parents who killed their children with an intellectual disability sometimes aren't held responsible for what they do. The research says that this is because people don't think that people with an intellectual disability are as good as people without an intellectual disability, and this is wrong. The girl was talked about as being different, small, and helpless, and the research shows that people with an intellectual disability are often talked about this way in the news. The news talked about Down syndrome as something that is not accepted by everyone. If you have any questions or comments, you can email or call me or my supervisor Lauren using the information on your screen. If you are someone with an intellectual disability and would like to have your say, we will be having a group chat in early 2022. Your thoughts will be used to help us better understand the maltreatment and neglect of people with an intellectual disability by family. If you would like to take part in the group talk, please contact us for more information. Thank you for watching.